Hello and welcome to Gefet in the Daf. I'm Yael Shimoni, bringing to you learning Iyun in your Bekiut Daf Yomi. And today we're in Perek Shlishi and Makot, and we're going to deal with something that we already saw in the Mishnah in the beginning of the Perek. In the Mishnah in the beginning of the Perek, there's a very interesting debate between Rabbi Shimon and Chachamim that the Gemara only comes to talk about in Daf Yud Zayin and Mudbet. Let's start by looking at the Mishnah. The Mishnah talks about all the things that you're chayav malkot about, and at the end it says also if you ate specific things, you're also chayav malkot. One of the things that you're chayav about is if you ate tevel. Tevel means that if you took fruits or vegetables in the land of Israel and you did not give a kohen his trumot masot, then it's asur to eat it, and if you ate it, it's tevel and you're chayav malkot. Says the Mishnah, kama yochal min tevel v'yeh chayav. How much do you have to eat in order to be chayav? Rabbi Shimon omer kol shiur v'chachamim omrim kezayit. According to Rabbi Shimon, even if you put just a bit of tevel in your mouth, you're already chayav. Chachamim will say that you have to eat a certain amount, kezayit. Rabbi Shimon asks Chachamim, אם אתם מודים לי ואוכל למעלה כלשהו שהוא חייב? Rabbi Shimon tells Chachamim, I know that you agree with me that if somebody ate a whole ant, he's also chayav malkut, and an ant is much less than kezayit, right? It's really an incy-bincy tiny thing, and still you're chayav malkut. So you must agree with me that if somebody ate also a piece of wheat, a whole grain of wheat, they're also chayav, even though a whole grain of wheat is much less than kezayit. Chachamim tell him, אמרו לו מפני שהיא כבריאתה. An ant is a whole thing. אמר להם, אף חיטה אחת כבריאתה. Even a whole grain of wheat is a whole thing. So you also have to be chayav if it's a whole grain of wheat. And here the Mishnah doesn't say what Chachamim answered to Rabbi Shimon. And it's also unclear what does Rabbi Shimon think. Does Rabbi Shimon think that you're chayav if you ate just a bit of something in your mouth, or does it have to be a whole thing? So the Gemara deals with these two issues. What is really the shita of Rabbi Shimon and what is really the shita of Chachamim, and it does that in Daf Yud Zayin. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara says. The Gemara begins by bringing us a machloket of two Amoraim about what Reish Lakish said. Each one of them heard something different about the explanation, what exactly is the Isur and shita of Rabbi Shimon. Amar Rav Bibi, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, machloket bechita, אבל בקמח דברי הכל כזית. According to Rav Bibi, also Rabbi Shimon agrees that if you eat a part of something, it has to be a certain amount. If you eat wheat, then you're chayav. But if you're going to eat flour, you have to eat a certain amount. A wheat, it's also a beriyah. Flour is not. That's according to Rav Bibi. Rabbi Yirmiyah is cholek, and he says, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, ki machloket bezo, kach machloket bezo. And Rashi here explains to us what Rabbi Yirmiyah thought, taking us a bit further in order to explain the Savara of Rabbi Yirmiyah. Says Rashi, וכסבר רבי שמעון, בכל האיסורים כלשהו למכות, ולא אמרו כזית אלא לעניין קורבן על שגיגת כרת. והלכה למשה מסיני היא. According to Rabbi Shimon, if you do something b'mezid, if you did it on purpose, it doesn't have to be a certain amount. It can be just a bit. Why? Because you went against the word of God. Why are you chayav malkot? Because you went against the word of God. That's if you did it b'mezid. If you did it b'shogeg, then God said, okay, only a certain amount. It has to be something big. Because you really did not go against him, it was by mistake. And that is halakha Moshe Sinai. So here Rashi helps us explain the shita of Rabbi Shimon that makes a lot of sense, that even if you're putting just a bit in your mouth, then you're going against the word of God. Now, who will win? Rabbi Yirmiyah or Rabbi Bibi? So the Gemara develops in a way that says that Rabbi Yirmiyah is right because there's a brisa that says exactly what Rabbi Yirmiyah said. Rabbi Shimon omer kol shu lemalkot lo mu kazat ela l'inyan korban. That's in the end of the sugya. So how does Rabbi Yirmiyah read the Mishnah? Asks the Gemara, and Rabbi Yirmiyah explains, I read the Mishnah leshitatchem. What does that mean? When Rabbi Shimon heard the Shita of Chachamim, he said, okay, I understand that we disagree. I'm much more radical than you. I think that even a part of something you're chayav, even if it's a bit. But according to you, at least agree with me that if you eat a whole grain of wheat, you're also chayav. And here Chachamim disagree. So first we understood the Shita of Rabbi Shimon. The Shita of Rabbi Shimon is not looking for a grain. For him, even the smallest bit of isur in your mouth, you're already chayav makot if you did it b'mezid. What do Chachamim think? And Chachamim are the ones being pasking for halacha, so this is, of course, important also halachically. So let's zoom into the middle of the sugya. So the middle of the sugya said that the Mishnah here was really Rabbi Shimon asking Chachamim, I know you disagree with me, but at least agree with me that anything that is whole is also chayav midin Beriyah. You're saying that there is a din Beriyah, a din of a wholeness of something. So it's not only in animals, it can be also in a piece of wheat, in a grain of wheat, it's also whole. What do Chachamim say? The Gemara gives an answer that is not written in the Mishnah. Rabbanan, Beriyat neshama chashuva, chita lo chashuva. According to Rabbanan, in order to be chayav malkot, you have to do an isur chashuv. If it's kezayit, it's chashuv. If it's not kezayit, then it's nothing. But if you ate something that is also beriyah, which is important, then you're also chayav. What is important? Not only being whole, but also being connected to a neshama. And wheat doesn't have a neshama. However, an ant does. Beriyat neshama. It's part of the world of the living. It's an animal. That's why you're chayav if you eat an ant, and you're patur if you eat a grain of wheat. So this is what's written in this Gemara. But in Sugya de Masechet Chulin, we have a few things that seem to have a problem with this Gemara. Let's begin with the first one, which is the reason why Tosafot asks the question. In the Mishnah, in Masechet Chulin Daf Tzadik Vav, they say, "Ha'ochel migid anashe kazayit sofeg et 40, achalo ben mo kazayit chayav." Gid anashe, which is a ligament in the hind foot, if you eat that, even if it's less than kezayit, if you ate a whole one, you're chayav. And the Gemara explains later that it's because it's also asur midin beriyah. And Tosafot here on our sugya asks, how can it be that here in the Gemara it says that anything that has a neshama is בריאה חשובה, אבל תימא דבפרק גיד הנשמה, אומרים הנשמה גיד בריאה ולא בטיל, ואף על גב דלת בנשמה. A ligament does not have a neshama of its own. So how come you say that you're chayav din b'riyah in a ligament? You must understand the Shita of Chachamim includes or creates a different explanation of what is b'riyah chashuva. Before we go into Tosafot's answer, let's just go a short review of what is the Isur of Gid Hanasheh. The story is of Jacob fighting the angel. The angel sees that he cannot win before Jacob returns to Israel, so he harms him and he hurts his foot. And then at the end of the day, when the sun comes up, then his foot is healed. And the Torah finishes by saying, "Al ken lo yachlu bnei Yisrael et Gid Hanasheh, asher al kaf yarecha ad hayom hazeh, ki naga b'kaf yarecha Yaakov b'Gid Hanasheh." What is the tam of this mitzvah? So the different tamim were said, and one of them is in Sefer HaChinuch, very interesting and relevant to our days. So let's just see his passage. Sefer HaChinuch mitzvah Gimel says, משורשי מצווה זו, כדי שתהיה רמז לישראל, שאף על פי שיסבלו צרות רבות בגלות מיד העמים ומיד בני עשיו, שיהיו בטוחים שלא יאבדו. It is true, says Sefer HaChinuch, that Am Yisrael goes through a lot of enemies have tried to destroy us, but we will always survive. And we remember that by not eating Gid Hanasheh. Why? רמז זהו, לפי שאותו מלאך שנלחם עם יעקב אבינו, שבא בקבלה של עשרו של עשיו, רצה להפכו ליעקב מן העולם, הוא וזרעו, ולא אכלו לו וציירו בנגיעת הירך, וכן זרע עשיו מצייר לזרע יעקב, לבסוף תהיה להם ישועה. So, this din of not eating Gid Hanasheh is a way for us to remember that we will always survive the hardships. Always survive the hardships. That's what's here in the tam of Gid Hanasheh. So after we saw the tam, let's go back to the Tosafot. Tosafot asked, how can you say that Chachamim think only something that has a neshama is asur midin beriyah? Gid Hanasheh doesn't have a neshama, it's still asur. First, the Tosafot gives an answer that he rejects. ויש לומר דהכי כאמר, שאני אגיד דבריאה. וכיוון דעתי מבריאת נשמה, שפיר אבי בריאה. Not only you don't have to be yourself while a neshama, you can be connected to a neshama. And since Gid Hanasheh, a ligament, is part of an animal, that's why it's also connected to its neshama. That's what Tosafot offers. And then Tosafot is cautioning on this. ולא נראה, דהנבלה דקייתי מבריאת נשמה, ואף על פי כן לא הווי בריאה. Says the Tosafot, but we know that an nevela is also asur be'achila, and still, even if you ate a whole nevela and it's less kezayit, you're patur. What's a nevela? If you have an animal that was kosher when it was alive, but it was not shechted, it's dead, but it was not being shechted. So that's a nevela. And the din of nevela is very surprising. Dafka nevela, if you eat a whole bird that's dead, even if it was a bird that you could have eaten if it would have been shechted, then even if it's a small bird and you're eating it whole, you're not chayav. How can we explain this? We it means that the ligament, that's not a good enough answer, because we said that the ligament is asur b'isur b'riyah because it's connected to the world of life. But also a bird in itself is connected to the world of life. It's mamash b'riyat neshama, and we see that when it's an avela, you're chayav only if you eat kezayit. How could that be? Explains the Tosafot. אלא על כוחך, הטעם תלוי לכל שעובד שמו שנפתח עובד בריאה, וניחא מנבלה, שאינו עובד את שמה, שלפעמים אף כשנפתחה קוראים אותה נבלה, ולכך לא עובד בריאה, אבל גיד עובד שמו על ידי שנחתך. Says the Tosafot, you have to understand there are substances and there are things. A nevela is a substance, it's not a thing. When a bird dies, it's no longer a thing. It became the substance of the nevela. How do we know? Because when I cut a nevela, even a piece of nevela is called a nevela. A ligament is a whole thing. It's called a ligament only when it's whole. When it's cut, it's not called a ligament anymore. Tosafot here is saying something that reminds the philosophy of Aristotle. So see that we have two different kinds of words that actually explain how we relate to something. And when we have a name for something that relates to it as something whole, when it will be cut, we will not use the same name to describe it. So that's how we know that it's of importance. Not only that you have to be connected to the world of living, you also have to have importance, and we know that by the word that describes you, if it's a word that is there only when you're whole, or does it describe a substance? So that's Tosafot's answer. Rashi, however, in Chulin has a different answer, very interesting, about nevela. Rashi here on the Memra of Rav in Chulin Daf Kuf Bet Amud Aleph says the following. Let's begin by reading the Memra of Rav. Rav says, "Achal tzipor dora b'chaya b'kolshu b'mitata b'chazayit." That's the din of the vela. If you had a tahor bird, it was very small, and you ate it when it was alive, it's a sul b'isur ever min achai. You ate it when it was alive, you're chayav even if it's less than kezayit. But after it's died and it's in a vela, you're chayav only if you ate kezayit. But a tzipot me'ah, an animal or bird that you're not allowed to eat at all, it's tameh. If you eat it during its life or in its death, you always chayav even if it's very small. So Rashi comes to explain why is that? Why is a tameh animal more problematic than a tahor animal? Like a tameh animal in its death is chayav even if it's less than kezayit, and a tahor animal in its death is chayav only if you ate the kezayit. Why is that? Rashi says, chayav the Beriyah, the tameh you're chayav because it's Beriyah. ולא צריכה שיעור, כדתנן באלוהים אלוקים, באוכל נמלה כל שיעור שהוא חייב. Rashi says, we learned this, an ant you're chayav, an ant in its life or in its death, it's always chayav. משום שהיא כבריאתה, אנו בריאה אסורה בכל שהוא. אבל לאו דנבלה ליקה לחיוב ומשום בריאה, דך שנבראת לא היה עליה שם נבלה. Rashi here says, I'll tell you why a nevela you're patur if you ate it whole. Not because of what Tosafot said, that the name thing, no. Kebriya means that the Isur was with you from the beginning. A tameh animal was always asur b'isur tameh. A tahor animal changed isurim in its death. In the beginning it was asur mishum ever min achai, and then after it died, there's a new isur that came about. This new isur, the isur of nevela, was not there when it was created, so it cannot be part of a Beriyah. Beriyah doesn't only mean it has to be important and connected to the world of the living, it also has to be something that endured from Beriyato, from the beginning of the existence of this creature. That's the Shita of Rashi. The Ran goes like Rashi and says that you have to have all things together. And he says, I need Rashi and Tosafot together, and he explains Tosafot in a slightly different way. And the Ran here also deals with Chelev. He says, wait a minute, Chelev, which is a part of an animal that is in her body, in a tahor animal, in a behemah. It's asur bisur chalev from the beginning, and it's part of the world of life. And still we see that you have to eat kezayit in order to be chayav bisur chalev. Why is that? Says the Ran, it's because chalev is not something that's in one place. חלב לא מקרה בריאה, אף על פי שהוא בריאת נשמה, לפי שאין כולו במקום אחד, ואינו כאין בריאה שתהיה מקובצת כאחד, וזה תנאי שלי. It says the Ran, it's not enough to be connected to the world of the living, and it's not enough to be something that is always asur from the beginning. It also has to be something that is in one place. This is like the Tosafot, but not like the Tosafot. But the Shulchan Aruch took all of these together and said, in order to be Beriyah, you need Rashi and Tosafot and Ran and everybody. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch. בריאה, דהיינו, כגון נמלה או עוף, טמא, בגיד הנשב לעבר מן החי, וביצה שיש בה אפרוח וכיוצא בהם, אפילו באלף לובטים, ואין לו דין בריאה, אלא אם כן הוא דבר שיש בו חיות, לאפוק החיטה אחת של איסור. So that's what we saw in the Gemara. It has to be connected to the world of the living. That's why a grain of chita is not. A grain of wheat is not אסור באיסור בריאה. לכן צריך שיהיה דבר שאסור מתחילת בריאתו. That's like Rashi. So we saw that the Isur has to be מתחילת בריאתו, לכן צריך שיהיה דבר שלם שאם יחלק אין שמו עליו, לאפוקי חלב. So here the Shulchan Aruch is saying the Tosafot in order to understand what the Ran explained about חלב. לכן צריך שיהיה שלם. Now we know from the Chazayin, if you cut the animal then, and it's less than kezayit, then of course you're patur. So this was our shiur in Din Beriyah. We did something very important. We saw also the shita of Rabbi Shimon and the shita of Chachamim. The shita of Rabbi Shimon was very interesting, that he thinks that any bit of isur that you put in your mouth, if you go against the word of God, then you're chayav malkot, and this whole story of kezayit is only if you did it b'shogeg. That was the shita of Rabbi Shimon according to the Gemara. And then we saw that the shita of Chachamim, we need to piece it in from different sugiyot. The Rishonim help us. The sugiyah here that says it has to be part of the world of life, and the sugiyah in Gida Nasheh that we have to understand that there's something else in this story. It has to be of importance of its own. Tosafot explains, and the Ran helps us understand it's in one place. And then another thing that we've learned, that it has to be mitchilat briyato. Rashi gave that an explanation, and that's a good explanation also why Gida Nasheh is asur and not nevela. And the Shulchan Aruch is passing all these things together, and that's how we reach the importance of being asur b'isur b'riyah. You have to be whole, you have to be connected to the world of living, you have to be a thing of a name of its own, and the isur has to be there from the moment that you were created. So I hope you enjoyed our shiur today, and we will meet again soon. Take care.